Welcome back to Aggie Pride, a UC Davis football podcast. We have a big time panel today. We had 5 people after the game on Saturday, the second round victory over Rhode Island. Tonight, we have 5 people again. This is really unique. It's 2 more coaches, but it's not Coach Biggs and Coach Smite. We have 2 legends as well, but from different ranks. So I want to welcome, including, of course, Nick King, including, of course, Dwight Smith, Coach Ben McEnroe from Heritage Christian High School, who's coached at Cal Lutheran and Thousand Oaks and has had a long coaching career down in Southern California, and Paul Rosa, who's coached at Wilcox High School, both baseball and football, and athletic director, and had a ton of success down in Santa Clara for a lot of years. So Ben, Paul, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having us. Honored.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you both on this week, and a big week it is, as we were saying before we hit record. And we'll get to all of that, but if either of you have had a chance to listen to the pod, you know that, we like to start, especially when we get to chat with folks at the beginning. And, you both have such awesome and extensive careers coaching, leading young men. And there was a seed planted at some point that led you to try that out. And it's like a chicken egg thing for me. Like, football made me curious about coaching and love coaching. And then coaching made me love football more. And so we just want to take some time at the top to get a little bit from you both. I bet there's multiple volumes and chapters that can be written, but just a little bit about what was that early seed of your love for the game of football, and how did that, in brief, lead you to explore a career in coaching? Ben, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to you, Paul.
I think for me, it started at a very early age. I was raised by a Texan, and in Texas, there's 2 seasons: there's football and spring football. So that was it from the beginning, going up through the 70s. He was a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan, so I had to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan at the time until the Seahawks came into existence. But, for me, I love the game. I realized, when the phone wasn't ringing a whole lot in high school, that I wasn't going to make it to the NFL. Really didn't think about having a career in football until my senior year in college. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? I'm trying to get into law school. I'm, getting a degree in history, which is a trivia degree. I didn't know what to do. And my offensive line coach said, hey, when I was done playing, goes, hey, let's go grab a beer and talk about something. And got offered a graduate assistant job for $11,000 plus 80% of my master's. And, I was all about it. Was the equipment manager for the entire athletic department. And I was so fired up. I went home and called my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm not going to law school. I'm going to be a coach. And well, that was one of those calls, but, by the grace of God, I haven't had another job since that night in 1992, and been very blessed to coach. And, this is what I've done. So I'm so blessed to be able to spend a lifetime in this game.
For me, it was a little bit different. I was a baseball player in college, coached baseball, had a love for baseball, but did play football in high school. And then when I started teaching, I started helping out the team by playing scout quarterback. I was young. It was fun just going out there on defensive days and throwing the ball around. But I really got hooked into football. So I started to coach football. And to me, as all you guys know, football is the ultimate team sport. You need all 22 guys or even more than that. You need all your scout guys. You need the whole team, not just the players, but the coaches. You can't do football by yourself. You can maybe try to get away with doing baseball by yourself, but football, you need all your staff. All the players got to be on the same page. It's a true family atmosphere, and it's just one of those things. I just really liked going to battle every week with a group of guys, all going after the same goal. And there's really no other sport like it. It's the ultimate team sport. So I at that point, I stopped coaching baseball and just kept coaching football, just because I thought it was, more of a challenge with everybody being on the same page, and it was a family atmosphere where you were just, it involved a lot more people.
I think, and I appreciate the background, and always love hearing the stories of how we got here. And of course, to set the context of why you're both here, not only just being amazing coaches in your own right, but having sons on the team. I know both freshmen, so it's a really exciting time to be on the team and the program. So I both wanted to give you guys an opportunity, as Brock was joking earlier on. Hey, we want, your sons to be proud and hear what you have to say. And if I gave my parents an opportunity to talk about me, I think it'd probably be 2 hours of podcast. But maybe starting with you, Coach Ben, give a little background on Corey and your son, and how he got here to Davis, and maybe like what you're most proud of him thus far at his Davis career or his high school career, something that stands out with Aggie Pride, as this is the name of the podcast. And then Coach Rosa, we can go to you.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be a baseball player. I mean, the day he was born, the first time I held him, I was just like sort of looking at him and looking at his shoulders and his hands, and he had a scowl on his face. And I told my wife jokingly, I'm like, hey, we got a middle linebacker here. And growing up in youth sports, he didn't play tackle football until he got to 6th grade. But he was a pretty good catcher and power hitter in baseball. And so I thought that might be the route. But when he got to middle school and finally started playing, he got banned from our local flag football league. Because one of my former players is a guy named Will Clemens, who's the assistant head coach at Cal Poly, D-line coach at Cal Poly. And, he taught him a couple of pass rush moves. He was, going with a double down and made a kid cry, go one arm to the throat. And the commissioner basically said, hey, you got to knock this off, or we can't have him playing flag football. And that was in 5th grade. So fortunately we got to 6th grade, got to middle school, and he was able to put the pads on and play. I sort of set my schedule at Cal Lutheran because we had the autonomy to say what time we were playing games. So we played we had a nice new stadium, and I moved everything to night games so I could go coach over at Oaks Christian Middle School when he was in middle school. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of that. I'm an offensive guy, so he was mostly on the defensive side at that time. And then we got to high school. Probably the greatest thrill of my coaching career is he played in almost 50 varsity football games in his high school career, and I was on the sideline for every one of them coaching. He was, by the time he got to his junior and senior year, was playing both ways. Started getting some interest from, everything from Mountain West schools to the Ivies, and the Big Sky. And, really it came down to, for him, just finding the right fit academically. He said, he's a pretty mature kid, a lot more so than I ever was at that age. I mean, I look at him, Paul, you're probably the same way. I'm just in awe of, who this kid is. And, he wanted to go someplace with a great degree and someplace that he was going to be developed. And Davis checked all those boxes, and we'll probably talk about the recruiting process later. But, I gave him a few guidelines and things to look at as he evaluated programs. I think, he may tell you something differently, but it really came down to Davis, Cal Poly, Montana, and Princeton. Those were sort of the final 4. And at the end of the day, he wanted to be out west, but he wanted to win and be developed. So he knew what he was signing up for. As far as, I've worked with Davis guys. I got a lot of friends that are Davis guys. So, I have so much respect for the history and tradition and how the process here. And he loves the process. I'm sure Paul's son's the same way. They love watching film. They love the preparation, the weight room, all the not so sexy stuff that comes with getting ready. And boy, Davis did such a great job in the recruiting process that, and then he had his official visit. They were playing Cal Poly and beating the brakes off of them. And that game, we're sitting there in the stands, and the Cal Poly equipment staff in the 3rd quarter is rolling all the equipment stuff out to the buses. And he elbows me and goes, Dad, check that out. And, he committed not long after that. And you asked about something I'm really proud of. I'm proud of how he went through the process. I'm proud of how he got on the phone and called everybody and told them what, he was coming to Davis. He called the other coaches. And those aren't easy conversations for young people to have. But I think it's part of the development. And, you put yourself out there, you've got to have those hard conversations sometimes. So that's what I was most proud of, is the process he went through, and obviously we're thrilled to be here, and just so proud of him making this decision.
That's amazing. And coach, maybe it's the through line of that Blue Force. You talk about getting kicked out. That resonated with me. I think I was in 5th grade also. I was playing soccer at the time, or it was 4th grade, and did a hard check, pretty much a tackle. They kicked me out, and my next year, my dad's like, "Yeah, you're playing football." So I think there's something that makes sense, that makes a football guy. Coach Paul, I'd love to hear the similar story for you and the path up there, and something that you're proud about too.
Braden's story's a little bit different than Coach Ben just mentioned. We didn't have, or he didn't have, many offers coming out of high school. He had a big senior year, both defensively and offensively. So at the very end, I think Davis had maybe lost a safety or two, and coach came down and took a look at him, worked him out, and ended up offering him a PWO. At the time, we were just thinking about going to a junior college, and we just thought it was a great opportunity to come to Davis, not just for the school, but for the football experience and the way that they develop players. I've talked to other guys and other coaches in the area that have had players go there, and everybody has raved about how they develop guys. They're kind of an old school type program where they're not just taking everybody out of the portal, and they're really trying to develop younger guys and build character and stuff like that. So Braden made the decision to do the walk-on. I think he's happy with his decision. I know he's happy with it. The one thing I would say with him is he's one of the toughest players I've ever coached. He played both sides of the ball. Being a coach's son, I think, helps you in the mental aspect of the game just because you've been around it your whole life. So he's one of those guys that gets everybody lined up, knows where to be, has just a little bit of an edge mentally, which he needs because he's not, he doesn't have all the measurables. He's not 6'2", run a 4.40, 40, those things. He's just a good football player. And that was another reason we had some other guys that had played in our league that were in a similar situation where they ended up walking on there. A Valley Christian kid that we knew pretty well played against my older son, and he ended up going on. I think he's playing at Pitt now, but we knew that they were going to play the best football players. They weren't just worried about measurables, and that's kind of the spot that we were looking for. And I think with Braden's game, his game is built more on the intangibles, toughness, smarts, football knowledge, just the things that make you a good football player that maybe aren't, like I said, 6'2", 220.
Love that.
Can I ask Coach a question?
Yeah, go for it, Ben.
Hey, how many sleepless nights did you have during the recruiting process when it's your own kid?
To be honest, I didn't really have many sleepless nights because we weren't really getting recruited, or Braden wasn't getting recruited. I keep saying we, but living vicariously through him. But we didn't have a lot of that. We got, some small schools, some schools out of town, obviously a ton of junior colleges, but nothing significant. So I slept great. We didn't have the same type of pressure, and the Davis PWO offer came pretty late in the game, and it was a perfect fit. So he accepted it pretty quickly.
I love that.
He's a heck of a player.
Yeah. That's so fun. I think, and I love you chiming in there, Coach McEnroe. One, I just want to call out, this is just fun, right? We always say before we click record with people, like, let's just have fun. And I love the remembrance or realization that, like, our high school football career and where we play and the exposure and the coaches that we have, and in some case, our fathers coach us, which is so unique and awesome about each of your situations. I mean, it really dictates so much of the opportunity to be able to play college football. And we know this because we've been a part of a million meetings and speeches. And we know that it's very hard to play college football. Dwight and I were walk-ons. Nick was, a walk-on as well initially.
Partial scholarship, but the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, and then to be able to play, and I think that's the cool part of each of your sons, like, because of the nature of it being a physical game, like our team is playing a lot of younger players, aka freshmen. And so literally, and kind of going back a little bit before that, Nick, I had to text him. I said, hey, when you ask your question, remind them that their sons are on the team, because I forgot to introduce the podcast with that obviously very important fact. But like, I met Paul at my last company doing fundraising. He was just the baseball coach at that time, or just transitioning to football. Ends up creating this like juggernaut at a public high school in San Jose, where there's the freaking big time West Catholic Athletic League that dominates. And then meeting, Coach Ben at the tailgate and getting to, hear Corey's story and that sort of thing. Like, I just want to say, like, this is so fun. And they're both playing. They both played in last week's game. And when we had Coach Biggs on, he's talking about Charlie Allen. They're talking about Scott Nixon, just like guys who hadn't had prominent roles who are playing in the game, making impact, making tackles. And so, with that kind of just information for the podcast community who are always, eating this stuff up, I wanted to kind of transition us to, again, a coach's perspective, a father's perspective. Like, what has it been like for each of you? And Paul, we'll start with you, to watch this team throughout the year, and specifically what you've appreciated about this coaching staff. Maybe it could be a small little minute coaching shift or adjustment that they've made, or it could be a schematic that you've appreciated throughout the year. So Coach Rosa, we'll start with your thoughts on the season.
I think schematically what impressed me the most was their halftime adjustments. I mean, if you look at a lot of the games that are played, Davis dominates in the second half, and that just goes to show how well the coaches are prepared, how quickly they can make adjustments, and then get the information to the players for the halftime, because you only get 20 minutes or 15 or 20 minutes to get that information out. And you can tell they have a great system at halftime that makes really good adjustments. In the big scheme of things, I think, like I mentioned before, they're not just coaching football. They create leaders, they create peers that younger players will look up to. I know in Braden's situation, being a freshman, it could be uncomfortable, but players on the team, you can tell, were coached to be good leaders, and it helped his progress in learning the defense, or just, where to go eat, or just things you need as a freshman to feel comfortable. The players do that, the senior leaders, and they're really good, high character people. And that just doesn't come with them getting in there. You can tell that's, it's bred through the program, and everybody really helps all the freshmen, and it made a comfortable situation. I would say the other thing that makes it special is, and I kind of mentioned this, but the way that they develop players is different. They're not going into the portal, and they truly coach the twos and the threes just like the ones, because you never know when you're going to need them. And this year's a great example, because the way they coach everybody at a high level. When the twos came in, when guys got hurt, they were prepared and really didn't skip a beat, because of the way they develop guys and coach everybody in the program. So that part of it is unique sometimes, and I know other college situations it's not that way. They're just gonna, maybe even get rid of guys and go into the portal and try to find somebody else. The developmental part, it may be secondary. Where here, it's definitely old school, and they're really trying to develop guys and create UC Davis players, not just skill wise, but character wise.
I think the thing that's jumped out to me is that, they were so honest in the recruiting process, and they've come through with everything that we talked about in the process, right? Whether it was, with academics, with the football side of things, they had a vision and a plan for my son's career that they laid out for us. And it's just, they're doing everything they said they were, and I've coached with guys from Davis. I've have dear friends that are Davis alums that played a while back. I've sent players to Davis as a high school coach, recruited against Davis as a college coach, and there's always been something special about it. And I think it's just a combination of everything that Coach was talking about. Plus, they're just great people. Good guys that are brutally honest, and I can't tell you, because you meet as a high school coach, you meet so many people in the recruiting process. So many different types of recruiters, and you hear all sorts of stuff, but really the Davis way of developing guys. I remember coaching against Davis when I was at Humboldt, and we came down to the Tomb on a Friday afternoon for a walkthrough, and they're doing fireman carries for 100 yards, and there's like 150 guys out there. I'm like, who are these guys? And those are the red shirts, and they were developing guys then. And then I listened to some of the Ultimate Warrior stuff they're going through now. It's really the same. The faces change, but the spirit of the place lives on, and it's something special in college football. And you recruit good people, and you recruit guys that know how to win. They figure it out, and I think that's really the secret sauce. Is you've got some really bright football minds on that coaching staff. I thought that what they did the other night, the second half adjustment, especially on the defensive side last week, was fun to watch. And they went from giving up 20 in the first half to nearly pitching a shutout. And how many 3-and-outs were there in the second half? That's good coaching. Those Rhode Island kids didn't just get sleepy because it was past their bedtime. They got shut down. And it starts with the kids on the field, but the guys pulling the strings behind the scenes are good. And then offensively, I'm never not impressed with something Plow does. Play call. I've stolen plays. I've tried to run them at the high school level and send him clips, and he's great about that. And I really respect those guys. I told somebody the other day, I haven't watched too many football games where I come away going, man, that was just such a great call, or such a great adjustment. And it feels like, especially in the high leverage games, that we've been able to come out of there and just say, man, that was so impressive. But it's just the spirit of Davis. That Aggie pride is really what it is. It permeates the whole place and all the alums and everybody I've met. It's a real thing, and I've experienced it on so many different levels throughout my career that it's really cool to be a part of it, kind of vicariously through my son.
Hey, Coach Ben, you mentioned, I think you said you coached Corey through 50 games or 50 varsity games, probably more than that. And curious to hear from both of you the dynamic. And Brock and Dwight are dads. I just mentioned I'm a new dad. My daughter just turned 1 on Sunday, so I'm learning kind of how to be a father. And so I'm curious to hear from you when you watch a game like the Rhode Island game or games past, when you're now not on the sidelines with those with your boys, like after the game, like what do you feel? Is it more just saying, hey, congrats, I'm proud of you? Do you go into, hey, I saw you miss this read? Like what is kind of the post-game conversation look like? And how do you continue to support them? Because it's a challenge going to a school. Davis has so many fantastic opportunities developing, young men, but you run into walls. We all did. And I can say Brock and Dwight helped me through my challenges. So, what kind of advice do you give as a dad as well as a former coach? So I know those are two questions in there, but curious to know, how do you kind of balance both, and advice for a young dad like myself, and hopefully to have a boy that can play football, or my daughter play football too. So talk a little bit about that.
Coach talks about find the joy, and finding joy. There's no greater joy that I've experienced in coaching than coaching my son. And, just because it was, I got to coach my girls. They were both college athletes. But being able to, share the passion that I've had, for most of my life. And, I tried to treat him just like everybody else, to be honest with you, when I was coaching him. I don't feel like, you can ask him sometime, I don't feel like I was extra hard on him, other than the load. He played both ways too. He never came off the field. He was our what's that guy's name for the Niners? Our Kyle Juszczyk in our offense. I mean, he did everything. He knew the offense, could get everybody set up. That's the hardest thing coaching without him now, is not having that guy. And I'm like, man, I was relying on that dude on both sides of the ball. He got everybody lined up, and he never played quarterback, thank God, but he was a quarterback on both sides of the ball in his career. So now, this is, he's so much farther along than I ever was at that age. I try not to, we always had a rule that, we tried to, NCAAs used to have a 10-minute cooling off period after games where you take the team in the locker room and you wouldn't let them out. We tried as a family from the youth sports day, we tried to have like a 30-minute no talk time where we would try not to talk about the game, but somebody was always screw it up, and 5 minutes would go by. But that I think that's a pretty good deal. But yeah, I let him talk, and the last words my dad ever said to me were, "I love you and I'm proud of you, son." And so I try to make it a point to say that to him, not just because of my dad. It is a way to honor my dad, but very proud of him. And we talk plenty of ball. I watched a little film today and sent him a couple thoughts, and we do talk ball, but I try to let him come to me with that more than I bring it up.
For me, I think I was a little bit too hard on my son, both my sons growing up. What I mean is you always, I think going back on it, you probably you treat him as equal as any other player that you had on the team, but you go home with them, so you get to talk about more things than normal. The other thing I would say is there's times where maybe he deserved some praise and I didn't give it to him through the team, like a player of the week or, practice player energy level type awards that we give here at school. And I would just never give any of my kids any awards. And I probably should have. I think a lot of times parents think, or people think, that the coach's kid gets everything. In reality, they don't. They probably get the short end of the stick. They're not, like I even remember not giving him the ball on the goal line when I probably should, just to get somebody else a touch or something like that. Even though if I was coaching another stud athlete, I would give that person the ball. So kind of going back on it, I was probably a little bit too rough in that sense. What I love about the situation now is, now we're just in a support mode where I don't really have to coach him. I just have to support him. Through some tough times early, he felt like he was struggling, but now you can just kind of reinforce the things that made him a good player, talk about those things, and just understand you're going to school now with a bunch of great athletes. You're not the best player on the team anymore. You've got to go from the beginning and grind it out. And I think he's done a great job of that. And earned himself some playing time and stuff like that. But it's just fun to talk football after the game and actually learn from him, because on that side of the ball, he definitely probably knows more than I do now. So it's interesting to see their schemes and was that your fault on that play? What coverage were you in? Stuff like that. It's just really fun to talk about. In this game, he got to play defense, and it was for a pretty long series. And he's put a ton of time in on defense because he's got to practice. In the beginning, he started on the scout team, and then he moved up to, when the injuries happened, he got to move up and get some 2 reps in practice. So he's been practicing a lot there, but never got a chance in the game. And the last series, we realized the 2s were going in, and it was pretty exciting. He made a couple tackles. I thought he played pretty well. He got a breakup on the 2-point conversion. So those things were exciting to see, especially in when you go to a game like that. It's a playoff game. The crowd was better than everybody thought it was going to be too. So it was a really good atmosphere. I thought the student section was great, but just to see him play in a college environment on defense, and it was a long series. So like, I know they had a 4th and 2, and I was actually hoping they got a first down so he could play a little bit more. But that part was cool. And then we got to talk about all that stuff after the game. Like, hey, what coverage were you in here? You guys were man to man. What was your job? It was just fun to talk about the 7 or 8 plays that he was in.
Yeah, my advice to you, Nick, would be give him the ball. All right, because hey, Paul knows what I'm talking about. Make sure he's got his touches, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, for you both, the guy who asked that question, he's called the king of the causeway. Okay, he's undefeated against the team across the causeway, and it just comes through in such a beautiful question. So, Nick, I want to appreciate that question. I appreciate both of your answers, and Coach Ben, like, really powerful to hear from both of you, but just sitting with, the ways in which you're thinking generationally in both directions, right? Like honoring your pops in how you, interact with your son. I think it's something that I aspire to as a parent that's early in the game as well. And that could be a whole other series of podcasts on parenting. But I want to shift us a little bit now to looking to the game on Saturday. Coach Ben, you mentioned the defense and how many 3 and outs they pitched. I think it was at least 2, maybe more. And then there was 2 turnovers on downs, like 2 4 and outs that they ended up. So it was just like, there's so much great momentum. The offense able to really turn on. And we broke down that game post game on the field a bit. But the news earlier that day that kind of shook FCS was the upset of the number 1 seed, the Bison. And so that sets up this matchup back at our place against the Redbirds. So I'm just curious, both of your thoughts about that game, right? I mean, I listened to Coach Brock, another Brock, Coach Brock Spack, I believe, from Illinois State, listened to his press conference and he fielded some questions about, how do you shift after maybe one of the biggest upsets ever in FCS, right? And they played us last year, and we all know how that went. New year, different situation in some respects. So just from a coaching perspective, how you might navigate that, and then just in general, thinking about the Aggies late in the year, we're in the middle of finals week right now, navigating everything that entails, what, as you think about this Illinois State team, and you think about the Ags that you've been watching all year, talk to us a little bit about how you might coach leading up to, what your coaching approach might be leading up to this quarterfinal tilt, and what you might expect to see or be looking out for on Saturday. And we'll start with you, Paul, and then we'll go to you, Ben.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would talk about is, how if you look at Illinois State having that big upset, they actually lost to them earlier in the year. Just goes to show how hard it is to beat a team twice, especially when you can, make adjustments after getting a film of the team you actually play. I think that's a big advantage, and Illinois State had that advantage going into their last game. I would use that as, hey, we played them last year in the playoffs, and I know we beat them 40-10, but they're a different team. They're coming off probably one of their biggest wins in school history. They're on a roll. We've got to, make sure we're dialed in and ready to go. The other part is I would talk about maybe, getting off to a fast start. We talk about the second half and doing a great job in the second half, making second half adjustments. But could you imagine if we just played the first half like we played the second half? And I know Coach has talked about, having that perfect game or having the really good full game, and we haven't had it yet. So I'm sure Coach Plow knows how to talk better than I do. I've heard him talk. He's a great speaker in front of all those guys. So I would say those two things, it's hard to beat a team twice. Don't take it for granted that we beat them last year. They're a different team. We're a different team. It's a totally new game. And can we get off to a really good start and then also make our second half adjustments and dominate the game? Because I will say, I think the conference that Davis plays in gives them a really good advantage. I know in high school football is different, but if you play in a really good conference, when you get to the playoffs, you're used to playing a high level of football. So I think that helps Davis in that sense. They've had a bunch of close games, and they've had that adversity moment where they've gotten through it in the Sac State game and all that. So they have all that experience. I think those two things would be the things I look at. Can we get off to a good start, and then obviously not taking them for granted.
I think I would focus on, trying to keep things the same leading up to the game, right? With all the distractions, all the excuses, there's a lot of reasons for us to not play well per se. But, I think that's one thing that the staff does a great job with. I mean, these kids will be prepared regardless of what the schedule, the preparation, the practice times, those things look like. I even looked it up today. I hope my boss isn't watching. I watched a lot of film today on Illinois State. So, but I also checked their final schedule, and they're in finals as well, I think. So, there's similar challenges they got to face, but just try to keep things as similar as possible. And then I'd probably say exactly what Paul said, in that they're still chasing perfection. They're chasing the perfect game. They're chasing the fast start. They played some amazing second halves, but I mean, you look at the Rhode Island game, we had 3 possessions inside the 20, came away with 3 points. And, so you get an opportunity to get out and jump on somebody and just challenge them. Let's see how well we can play. Be free, find joy, play loose, all that. And then let's just come out and let it rip. And I think that would be my message. They don't have to be superhuman, but they can be better than they have been in the first half. And, we're still chasing that game. So I would continue to strive for that, because when we put one together, it's going to be spectacular.
Well, you spent all that time in the film room, Coach. You got a quick 30 or 60 on the Redbirds. So you want to share?
Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Like I said, I spent a lot of time on that today, and yesterday. But defensively, they kind of remind me of Idaho schematically. A lot of 3-down stuff. They'll bounce into a 5-down versus certain personnel groups. They like to bring pressure. Last couple of weeks from the boundary side, especially number 4 is sort of their blitz guy. He's their boundary safety. They'll bring the inside backers occasionally. They've started to mess around with a little bit of a, sort of a wide front with double 3 techs and walk those backers up. They're blitzing those guys. They're dropping 8. They're doing a lot of different things. They're a big physical team. Their athletic ability doesn't impress me, but their length, especially in the front 7, is good. So you see a lot of deflected balls, a lot of knockdowns. Very opportunistic defensively, but they did remind me of Idaho some. Offensively, the quarterback's a little bit, he kind of reminded me of Baker Mayfield type guy. Just kind of makes stuff happen. And, hey, that guy's never met an interception that's bothered him. He gets picked, he turns the ball over, but, at the end of the day, he gets it out there, and they've got, don't sleep on their receiving core. They're very good. They're skilled. They're not fast, but they know how to run routes and get open. And, I like their tailback a lot, man. Number 5, he's a dude. He's a bounce back, I think, from Cincinnati or somewhere, and he's a home run hitter. He can pass block, like he's a legit guy. But they're very simplistic offensively. They run inside zone and zone read with RPOs. They're in a 3-by-1 bunch set. It's 90% of the time they're going to run the inside zone with a bubble out of that bunch, and it's very simplistic, but they execute. And, I watched the press conference with the coach, and I like that guy. Like that's a dude I'd like to play for,
Same.
He seems like a cool guy, to play for. So, I'm not a predictions guy, but I think we've got the better team, the more athletic team. But man, they're solid, very solid.
Yeah,
that was a little longer than 60 seconds.
No,
Sorry.
that was great.
That was perfect.
That was
great.
amazing. That was incredible, man.
Yeah, that was fun.
And Coach Ben, you brought up a good point too, or I think it was actually Coach Rosa, like playing them. I didn't realize that they were in the same conference, so they played earlier in the season. So as you know, getting film on them twice is huge. I didn't actually realize this, that they lost to them in the championship. I think it was 2013. So there's already a lot of bad blood there. So this wasn't just some random playoff matchup. There was a lot of kind of background to that, and obviously testament to them to actually executing. But I do think there's a lot of context, as we know, playing a division rival and playing them again for the playoffs. So that was a kind of a big takeaway as I was doing a little bit more research.
Well, just the familiarity of in FCS football, it's like, ooh, the Fargo Dome, right? And that's a big deal. I mean, that place has earned its reputation, but there were only 10,000 people there, which was about half the capacity. It was just it could have been flat, and you got a team that wasn't scared of them.
Yeah.
And what's the old saying? Whether you think you can or can't, you're usually right. And they weren't scared of those guys. They punched them. And the other one that impressed me was, they jumped on South Dakota State 35-0 in the second quarter. I mean, and now that game, and that was something that if I was coaching, I'd look at. They got a little tricky in that game, and they got cute. Ran some Philly specials, ran some double reverse. Like they let it fly, and so I mean they have that in their DNA. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that razzle dazzle. Nothing to lose. We gotta find ways to score points. The receivers look like guys that can throw the ball too, probably. So just they'll be ready for anything.
Yeah. Well, love it, guys. This has been really fun, and I'm glad that we got like the full coach experience here at the end, and like started to break it down and talking about blitz packages and schematics on offense. And yeah, I think when we look at the game, like it's a little bit of contrasting styles with our athleticism and creativity on offense against, like you said, coach, just more of like here's what we're gonna do. You're probably gonna know what we're gonna do. We're maybe we get the South Dakota State creativity game, but I think it'll be a fun one on Saturday. And so 2:00 ESPN Plus for those who are not going to make their way to Davis, but you should just make your way to Davis for the game. You can run into these guys pregame along with us. We'll have some beanies for sale this go around because we're smart. We get what's happening with the weather. It's freaking cold, people, but we'd like to finish, but we finish with like 30 seconds of a final word. This would be with a podcast audience in mind, but also, like we said earlier, I think kind of with your demographic in mind, people who are this close to the program, some other parents in the program, or other folks who might be like wondering, hey, what's it like being a part of UC Davis in this capacity as a parent? So, Coach McEnroe, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I mean, the first word that pops into my head is gratitude. I'm grateful that my son made a great choice. I'm grateful that he's here. I'm grateful for his teammates that, have taken him in and treated him so well. I'm grateful for the coaching staff, being men of their word and, just sticking to the proven process that is Aggie pride and player development, team development. Grateful for, all my friends that are Davis guys, my old friends, and grateful for my new friends. And there's a lot of carryover and, there's not 6 degrees of separation, everybody knows everybody. So, I'm just so, I know my wife, I speak for my wife. We're just so grateful that, our son chose UC Davis Aggie football, and we're excited for the future and to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think my advice to parents would be, don't just look at football, school, look at the whole fit. Like, do you have a good relationship with the coaches? Can you trust the coaches? Are they out not just to make you a better football player, but to build character, become a man, have a really good culture? And when you're making those decisions there, it's hard to tell. But those are things that I would definitely look into. Like, are the players leaders? Are they helpful? Do they give advice to freshmen? Do they make their experience easier? I think those are things to look at. Also, is the school looking into developing players, or are they just trying to find the best ready-made players? Because every player coming out of high school needs some type of development. And if you can get to a really good school that develops, I think the goal is to make your son the best possible player that he can be with whatever his ceiling is. And in order to do something like that, everybody's ceiling is different. You're going to need some coaches that actually put some time into the younger, maybe not as athletic, but good football players, that you don't see that too often. But I think that's happening here at Davis, and it's a really good environment, not just the coaches leading, but players leading and being really good peers and role models. And I can see a change in my son already, in a sense of just becoming more mature, a real good team player. And then I think when he gets older, he'll do the same things because the culture that's built here.
Love it. We're looking forward to seeing Corey and Braden get some PT, and I know every role is important and you never know what's going to happen in a game. And we've seen that all season with guys being thrust into more PT. So thanks again. This has been fun, and we'll see you real soon.
Thank you. Really appreciate the
Thanks,
opportunity.
Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Appreciate your work too, man. Like I said, we have dinner with you guys, every week. So appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And I think it's fun to listen to the podcast. You guys do a great job. I've been listening to it, like you said before, mowing your lawn. You're just listening to it. It's a great thing to do while you're doing some tasks, and just had great guests on, learned a lot about UC Davis, which I wouldn't have learned without listening to the podcast.
Love it.
Love it.